4 people. Now, here's the question. What was the date of creation? Well, it's very hard to tell. Very hard to tell. Archbishop James Unger, who lived from 1581 until 1656, picked the date. He said that it was 4004 BC. The Jewish calendar has it at 3764 BC, which would be an Earth that's 240 years younger than what Unger said. The Septuagint has it at 5270, so that would be 1,266 years older than what Unger said. Josephus said, he was a Jewish historian, and he said it was 5555. And I like his date because it's just easy to remember. 5555. That would be 1,551 years older than Unger. There is another scholar, Kepler, who said it was 3993. So that would be 11 years younger than Unger. Melanchthon, of the Reformation days, had it at 3964, 40 years younger than Unger. Luther had it at 3961, a scholar named Lightfoot at 3960, and there's another scholar named Playfair, and he had it at 4008 BC, which would be just 4 years older than what Unger said. So, what are you going to pick? I want to say that all of those were very well qualified scholars. And they were there before the days of evolution. And since then, a lot of scholars have tried to push it back to multiple thousands and tens of thousands and even into the millions of years. When I was growing up, it was quite popular to try to blend evolution and the Bible and try to accommodate carbon-14 dating, which at that time when I was growing up was thought to be irrefutable. Since that time, carbon-14 dating has come under major criticism and shown not to be a very good way to ascertain the age of something. And what I'm saying is, we don't have to accommodate our belief to the changes, the peaks and the valleys of the science world that's out there. I know there have been a lot of approaches that have been taken to that, but let's just say that scholars who were before that discussion, very good scholars, had it pegged between about 3500 BC to 5500 BC, all just using the information given in the 5th chapter and the 10th chapter of Genesis, where you have the genealogies. Now, other theories have come to light since then, but let me just say that when everything is considered and all the possibilities that are held by evangelical conservative scholars, no one seems to be dating the earth more than 10,000 years old. And most are right around the 5,000 year mark. So, I'm just, for the purposes of this class, going to go with Unger, 4004 BC. And I want to do that because it's kind of easy for us. And I want to say that let's illustrate it by saying that Dallas represents the age of creation. He looks kind of old, but maybe not that old. Middle name is Methuselah. Okay. And then we're going to say that at this end, Levi represents the coming of Christ. You see, he's not quite at the end of the table. He's at about 5 BC, okay, which was probably the birth of Christ, 5 BC. Not quite the end of the table. All right. If we have 4004 BC and we've got 5 BC, where is the middle of that? Roughly at 2000, where I'm standing. Roughly right here. Right here. Middle point. Birth of Abraham. Just about the time of the birth of Abraham is going to be the middle point historically if you go with the very conservative date of 4004 BC. Then, this is Genesis 1 through 11, and this is the rest of the Old Testament. How about that? Isn't that something? So you can see that the major focus is not on this first Bible period, is it? This first Bible period, starting with good old Dallas over here, this first Bible period is going to cover the same amount of time, roughly, as from this middle point at Tom to Levi over here. Isn't that something? Obviously, the Old Testament, the major subject of the Old Testament is not the first 4 events, but is going to be starting right here with Tom. I mean, right here with Abraham. All right? And it's going to be about what happens here and the succeeding things that begin to unfold for us. And so these first 11 chapters in this first Bible period are really to explain how the world got the way that it is, where evil came from, why there was a need for the nation of Israel, and it just puts a context for God's wonderful and magnificent and eternal, I will add, program called Israel. So the rest of the Old Testament will be about Israel. Okay, the idea in Genesis is that we had creation, we had creative days, don't we? And in these creative days, it's very interesting to see that in the first place, God created light. Now, who wrote the book of Genesis? Moses. So who would be the first people to read the book of Genesis? The Israelites that have come out of Egypt. And he's probably writing it somewhere around 1400 BC. A little bit before that. And so when he is writing this, he's writing to the first, but mostly to the second generation of Israel that have come out. And he wants them to know that the God who created them and created everything around us had a very interesting order. And the first thing he did was he created light. And then he created atmosphere. And then land and vegetation and sun, moon, and stars and the fish and the birds and land animals and man. And then God rested. All right, now this word day, on the first day, that word day is used in different ways in the Bible. And some have said, well, those days are ages and ages and ages, maybe thousands of years. Others have said that these days represent a creative day with thousands of years in between them. Let me say I have a problem with that, because if you have vegetation, it has nowhere to get carbon dioxide because there aren't any animals to breathe it back out. We're going to need to have animals on the planet in order for there to be a balance between oxygen and carbon dioxide, aren't we? And so if you put thousands of years in between, the plants are all going to die from lack of carbon dioxide, unless God pumps carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. But there's no need to say that. We don't need to say that. This word is yom in the Hebrew, and whenever the word yom occurs in the Bible with an ordinal, like first, second, third, 115th, or whatever, anytime you put an ordinal with it, it always means a 24-hour period. So that when, and that is without exception anywhere in the Bible. So I don't see any need for us to make these days any longer than a 24-hour period. In fact, if you will notice the text, it says, and the evening and the morning were the first day, and the evening and the morning were the third day, were the fourth day. And so we have a light, and a period of darkness, then a period of light. You say, wait a minute, why didn't you say morning and evening? Because the text says evening and morning. And to this day, Jews begin their day in the evening. And so at roughly 6 o'clock or so, it's the beginning of the next day. So you're right now in Monday. Oh, it's Monday already? But that's the way that operates. Okay, so we just need to understand that when we are thinking of, in the Bible, about the word day, any time that it is used with an ordinal, it always means a 24-hour period of time. Not only that, but you need to remember that when God gave the 10 Commandments in the 20th chapter of what book? Exodus. Hey, you guys are getting good. All right. The 20th chapter of Exodus, when he did that, he said, remember the Sabbath and keep it holy, for on 6 days, in 6 days the Lord created the heavens and all this is in it, and on the seventh day he rested. Therefore, he hallowed that seventh day. Does that mean I have to work for 6,000 years before I get my day off? No, we're talking about he is obviously referring to a 24-hour period of time when he is quoting or referring to the creative days. And so, for those reasons, I would like to suggest to you that I don't have any doubt whatsoever that when you read about the creative days, we're talking about 7 24-hour periods of time in succession. And you don't need anything, you don't need it to be anything else. That's the normal reading of the text, and it is consistent with the Hebrew use of the word yom in the rest of the Bible. Okay?
What does that ordinal mean?
An ordinal means a number.
A number.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. An ordinal is similar to a cardinal, but cardinals are... Yeah, that's a red letter day. Okay, so Yom. Would you like for you to look at day 2 with me for a minute? In day 2, can somebody read about day 2 for me?
Then God said, let there be firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. Thus God made the firmament, and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament. And it was so. And God called the firmament heaven, so in the evening and the morning was the second day.
Okay. Now, there are a couple of uses of the word firmament in the text here, but in this verse, on this second day, it seems that the word firmament means atmosphere. That is, the area where the birds fly. That is, the air that you breathe. And it would seem that what he is saying is that there is water above and that there is water below that atmosphere. The water below would be oceans, and the water above is something we are not familiar with. When I was in school, there was this theory that I have on the screen, and that is that way up above the atmosphere was a thin, some have said centimeters, some have said a few inches of water, which was in perfect, almost like a just perfectly flat or perfectly smooth surface, so that you could clearly see right through it to the stars and the moon, but that this served to filter out ultraviolet rays, harmful ultraviolet rays, and also served to create a greenhouse effect on the